What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you feel like you've been dealt a bad hand in life, watch this episode. If you feel like, what if this? I could have done better. Watch this episode. If you're feeling bogged down by unfairness, watch this episode. Today, my good friend Sean Chang comes in and shares his experience, how he overcame a bad hand in life and used that to motivate him to follow his dreams, how a person can block out all the noise regardless of the situation, and focus on a goal. This is my favorite one to date, so strap in and get ready to expand your worldview. As always, smash, like, share, you know the deal. Let's do it. But I'm gonna push the envelope, maybe in some questions that I think it's my goal is to ask people that may wonder, but don't have the balls to ask. Right? Because if you meet someone in passing, there are things that you want to say or ask, but you don't really feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
But then we come into this situation here where it's just me and you, and it's an opportunity to address maybe some of these issues. Maybe there are questions that you're like, I wish someone asked me, but you don't want to offer up. Who knows where this goes? But again, if you're like, bro, no, then no big deal.
Appreciate the disclaimer. That's very respectable. I'm a pretty open book. I think the more that I have to share, because it's very hard. I feel like everyone's story is so unique, and if I can share something that you really won't have exposure to, I feel like I have the opportunity to share something that you might learn from.
Awesome. So I'm going to start at the top because there's people here that are possibly listening and not watching. And even if they're watching, it's hard to tell. But I'm going to address the elephant in the room. And you had a series on a post on your Instagram saying that as well. The elephant in the room is that you are in a wheelchair. And how old are you now?
I'm 25 now.
25. So you're 25, you're in a wheelchair. You didn't grow up in a wheelchair.
Not at all.
What happened?
So I was in a motor vehicle accident in January 2016. I think it was the 31st. I was in my second year at UGA, and I had finished my first round of exams for like accounting, all the major entry business level stuff, and I got my ass beat. And so I had stayed up so much, like studying and pulling all-nighters just to cram as much as I can to be prepared for. And then after I finished all the exams, I was like, all right, let's drive back home, because that's what I was doing, taking my friends home, back to Gwinnett County, and spending time with my family on the weekends. Because it was about only an hour drive from, Buford to Athens. So that's what I did. I think it was like a Friday or Saturday. It was a Friday night. We drove all the way to Snowflake Tea House, the one next to Sweet Hut in Duluth.
Okay.
And we were having like boba. We had dinner, had dessert there, and we got pretty late. It was like 1, 2 a.m. And I was just going to crash at my friend's house because he lives a lot closer. But my dad, being as Korean as he was like, come home, like it's getting way too late. And it was very odd because he's very liberal for a Korean, actually. So I don't know what prompted him to ask that or tell me to come home, but I guess just me not being home often enough. He was like, yeah, just come home and sleep in your own bed. So I was super tired. I was trying to be like, no, Dad, can I just sleep over at my friend's house? I'll just see you tomorrow morning. But he was adamant, so I was like, okay, I'll go. So we're driving on 85. There's an express portion on 85, right? You can on the right hand side that takes you to like Sugarloaf Mills all the way to exit 109, and then you can get onto the actual 85. And so I had fallen asleep on the wheel on there, and when I woke up, I was like going 65 miles per hour speed limit. I was like, the moments when you're super tired, you're just like dozing off. So I was dozing off, and some people think are like, oh, were you drunk or using drugs? I was like, no, none of that. I had boba. I should be awake. I had caffeine, but I was just tired. And so I try to move over to the left lane because I saw that there was a roundabout coming about, because there is for certain of those exits, but there was a car like speeding and coming through. So I was like, okay, let me just slow down the fast as I can, and because I didn't want to hit him. So when I slowed down, I was like, oh, I should be able to go in. Pavement ran out, and so if the pavement runs out on the roundabout, I'm just going straight into the ditch. So I'm on the brakes as much as I can, locking up, and I'm like, oh, shit. And so I hit the ditch, and then it feels like that movie scene. Everything's in slow-mo. Time is like, it really stopped to like the millisecond. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And then I'm going, and I hit the tree, and my body just snaps. And then I just lose all sensation of my legs. I'm awake throughout this whole thing. I didn't pass out at all. And I'm just like, oh, fuck. And in that moment, it hurt for a second and then it stopped. And I think it was all the adrenaline kicking in that moment. And so what had happened next is like, okay, I realized my legs are just not moving the way, because I thought I was just gonna get out of the car and check up on the car. I was like, man, this is a bad accident. And then I realized I can't move. I was like, and I'm panicking at this point. And like hysterically laughing. I'm like, you got to be shitting me here. Like this can't be happening. So I realized no one is coming over to help me. Not even that car that passed by. It's 2 a.m. There's really no cars on that access portion. Everyone's on the main 85. So I'm like, okay, I got to find my phone. My glasses are on my face, like my bag, papers all over the car, airbags all deployed. So it was a pretty bad hit. And so I unknowingly had broken my back. My T12 vertebrae burst fracture. So it split into a bunch of little fragments and actually split a lot of my internal organs. I was bleeding internally and I didn't know because I had so much adrenaline coming on. So effectively I was dying, but because of all the adrenaline, I was just trying to function and make sure that, hey, I get to do what I need to, call the police, make sure someone can come. And so I find my phone, I bent over with the broken back, which is horrendous because now I'm introducing more swelling, pinching my spinal cord, and permanently paralyzing me even more. So I don't know any of this. I don't even know what happened in my body at that moment. So I call the police, and this is the part where I got really upset. The police is trying to do a drug test on me, and I'm telling him, like, I'm paralyzed now. I can tell I'm paralyzed. Like it's starting to hurt. Like I'm not on drugs. I'm having a conversation with you right now. I'm not. Why are you trying to drug test me? Like you're not gonna have me get out of the car. I can't move. Like you can't move me. Like this is not what you should be doing right now. And so I'm getting even upset in that moment with that too. Everything's going bad. So I'm just like closing my eyes, just saying a quick prayer. I'm like, God, I don't know if I'm gonna live or die, but like I'm just gonna trust that, you know, you're gonna pull me through this. And then obviously, firefighters came, cut open the door, dragged me out safely. I'm in the ER room at what's the hospital called in Lawrenceville? They just changed it to Northside, Gwinnett Medical Center.
Gwinnett Medical.
Yeah. And then I'm laying there. All these doctors, one by one, doctors are like poking at me, asking questions. Hey, can you feel this? Can you feel that? One doctor comes in, asks that question. Another doctor comes in, asks that question. I got 3 doctors coming in. I got like 4 doctors coming in. I'm like, how fucking bad is this? And they're like, you've sustained a spinal cord injury. Well, we're gonna do some X-rays, but just know that's why you can't feel your legs, you can't move. You should probably call your parents. And so I call. It feels like an eternity. They're getting me drugged up on Dilaudid, so I'm like zoning in and out. Some pretty heavy stuff. And you know, my mom's coming in. She's got dewy eyes, and it breaks my heart seeing my parents cry. I don't see that often. So like, and I just felt so bad. I'm like, this is my fault. Like, I should have just stick with my guns and just whether just taking a quick nap or just gone to my friend's house. I can hear that chansori, or just like I can hear it all tomorrow morning from my dad, and I'm just having so much regret in that moment. And then at the flip side, my dad's like, I shouldn't have told him to come home. There's so much going on, but it's unspoken, right? Like it's just intense in those moments. I go into surgery, and it goes on longer than expected. So everyone's freaking out even longer. 1 hour passes, 2 hour passes. They're like, Sean's still not out. And so I have very little memory of being in ICU because I was so drugged up. I'm in and out. And yeah, and that's kind of how that injury happened there.
So you were 18, 19?
I was 18 then.
18 years old.
Yeah.
Whole life ahead of you.
Exactly.
So excited to be with your friends. Just coming home. And it's interesting because the first thought was that to almost blame yourself, which is such a weird place to be.
At first, I didn't know how to kind of comprehend the feelings because there were so many emotions going on. And there's like, number 1, am I going to die? Number 2, am I going to walk? Number 3, and then all the other thoughts came after. But I really did blame myself. I feel like a lot of mistakes that happened in my life. I think I am the hardest on myself first to really analyze what did I do wrong. Yeah, and that's kind of how I took that position initially.
So after the accident and you come out of surgery, when did you know that you wouldn't walk again?
So
was that immediately, or did they think that you would?
So that they aren't liable and they don't get sued out the ass. They're gonna tell you 100% of the time, hey, you're probably not gonna walk again. They have to, yeah, because if they give you any hope, well, the doctor said this and so and so. Spinal cord injuries are very tricky in that it's a lottery chance of who recovers and who doesn't. Yeah. So they'll like, if they'll tell you this, if you recover, you'll walk in the first 2 years. If you don't, you're kind of stuck in there for life until medical advances happen. So that's kind of what they told me. But again, having a very optimistic look on it, I was like, all right, let me see what I can do. And then actually being transferred over to Shepherd Center, which is the rehab center that I was at, it actually almost demotivated me even further, because like I was like with all these other people who had spinal cord injuries, and some of them were like, oh, I can feel my toes, and then they start walking, and I'm like, I don't feel shit.
Fuck.
Oh fuck.
Yeah.
And I'm like panicking, and like some people are I'm seeing so much more improvement, and then they're just doing day-to-day stuff like, let's put your sock on today. I'm like, fuck, how fucked am I? And that was so much to process in those moments.
So what was that rehab process like? How long were you in rehab?
I was in Shepherd for 4 years, and I was
4 years.
Or sorry, 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah,
4
4
months.
months. I don't know why I said years, but 4 months, and then I did about a couple more months following after that. I did outpatient PT, so I would have to drive and do physical therapy then. But bulk of my time in that 4 months, it was something occupational therapy, just to normalize my life in the wheelchair, and that's a weird thing to do, in my opinion, because it almost felt like I was throwing in the towel already. But they do that just because they don't know when you're going to walk again, or if you'll ever walk again. So they have to make sure you're prepared for worst case scenario. And so a lot of it was like just how to put on my clothes, because at the time my back was still broken. I had a full brace on my chest, and there was a lot of things I couldn't do. Like I couldn't bathe myself. I had nurses helping me. But with time, once healing, the brace was off, I could be a little bit more flexible, get a little bit more comfortable in my body, things of that nature. And then they were just teaching me, hey, you got to stretch. This is the workouts that we recommend. We're going to show you how to do it. And it was really preparing me to be as independent as possible. That was what PTOT was essentially.
So you were staying at Shepherd for 4 months, and you're sleeping there, and your family's visiting you occasionally.
Occasionally.
What is that like being there?
Oh man. The first night was horrendous because my bodily functions were at a disconnect. So I couldn't even poop or pass gas. Like my body was just not working correctly. So I was in extreme pain with a lot of gas buildup inside. I hadn't gone to the restroom in 4 days. Yeah, I was screaming and crying in pain. And no matter how much Gas-X or other drugs they were giving me, it was just not passing through. So it was just, it was an extremely painful experience to be in there. Not because of them, but just because of this injury that had happened. And then initially, all these people were coming to visit me, friends that I haven't seen or friends that were close. And you get to see true colors of who are in your circle. Because as the weeks went by, less and less people came to really see you, talk to you, continue to motivate you, and just be real with you. My family came every week, bringing panchan and seeing and just trying to cheer me up. But friends, I went from seeing 150 people to maybe 2 people max consistently. And I was like, wow, this is what my relationships are. And that put me in a whole crisis. I was like, man, I guess all of the relationships that I thought I had built and continued with these people really don't mean much then, because I'm at the lowest of my lows now. And being alone, watching people on Instagram, social media, and they're continuing their lives and doing all these stuff that I was planned, booked for, and was wanting to do, it's now gone. And I don't know when I can partake in it again. So it was I would say the odds were stacked against me for my mental. And the whole time it was like, I have to keep my mental strong here, because they were offering antidepressants left and right, like it was candy. Because I understand some people, they're paralyzed from the neck down. They can't move a single finger. They're breathing out of a tube through their neck. And I can see why you'd be so depressed. But I was like, I cannot be like that. I'm alive. I need to be thankful for being alive. I got to make the best that I can. And we'll see what's going to happen after rehab. So that was the mental that I had going in there.
When you're in rehab, what do you think the darkest moment was for you?
Oh, everything that you thought was normal. Everyone likes to dream out the roadmap of their life. Hey, at this stage, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna graduate college. I'm gonna meet a wonderful girl or guy. I'm gonna get married. I'm gonna get this job. All those hopes, I couldn't even have those. They were all just thrown out the window because I didn't know what a normal life would look like being in the wheelchair. Right? I was like, hey, how does dating work? People are gonna perceive me in a odd way now because they're gonna see that I'm disabled, and dating was actually pretty interesting. I'm thankful that I grew a thick skin, but I experienced like one girl, her parents straight up told me, hey, you seem like a wonderful guy. Parents are well off. You're going to college. You seem highly motivated, but you're disabled. I don't want you dating my daughter. And like that's just hard words. It's like, damn, I'm not a terrible person. Like I got dealt a crazy hand, and now I'm just making the best that I can. And that's what you're going to say to me. So those are the darkest moments because what you thought, it's now the unknown. Where everyone's scared of the unknown. Now that's all thrown at you at once. So that's the darkest moments.
So you talked a little bit about your new normal. And I think that's a funny word these days because over 2-3 years of COVID, they use that term so much.
Yep.
And it seems so stupid to think that dealing with COVID and how to adjust is the new normal when we have someone like you who really dealt with the new normal. And it just puts that phrase into perspective.
Yeah. That new normal for me. And it's funny because I saw a lot of people frustrated with, oh, this is new normal. I was like, I've already went through this, so I wasn't freaking out. I was like, all right, we just have to adapt. The new normal is just learning how to adapt. I was listening to your podcast with Peter this morning on my way here. It's just manning up and owning up to things. And that's really, I was like, I really cannot bitch and complain here. I can be that guy that sits in my bedroom and do nothing, or I can just go out and get it. Fuck whoever looks at me. Or I used to care a lot what people. Like they would stare, oh, it's a Korean guy in a wheelchair. Because to be honest, I don't see many other Korean guys in a wheelchair or Korean people in a wheelchair. It's very stigmatized even when I went to Korea too. So I was like, fuck all that. I just got to do me and I got to keep chasing and just make sure that I'm taking care of myself.
How do you block out all that noise? Because again, you can feel it. And I'm sure you feel sometimes like, oh, bro, I feel like they're looking at me. And you kind of feel that. You can feel the eyes around you.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
It's a lot of pressure.
How do you deal with that?
So at first I would just be confrontational. I would just look back at them and then they would just shy away. That's Korean culture. Like if they get caught, they're like, oh, okay. You could be rude about it. You can be like, why are you staring? And I kind of approached that, but that was creating a lot of bitterness and hate inside of me. I was like, I cannot handle this because I was taking that to my relationships and my people because that's what I was festering inside of me. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I just ignore it? I've been hearing it since kindergarten. Just ignore it. I was like, I really don't need to give my time and day to these people I don't know about. If they have questions, man up or just come up and ask me. I'm an open book. I'm a very personal person, very easy to talk to. It's just that I realized that, man, nothing really matters out here other than what I'm doing and the people that I care about. So if they're staring, let them stare. Yeah, it's their loss if they're not. If they want to ask a question, take the opportunity to come meet me, chat me up. I'm more than happy to. But if that's kind of how I approached it after going through different stages of how to deal with it.
So I'm sure at a certain point through the rehab process, you're kind of deep, dark, concerned, anxiety, so much unknown about what's going to happen next. How long did it take you to almost get out of that, for a lack of words, out of that funk?
I would say to like in Korean, like 정신 차려, like to really clear my mind, it took me 2 months. Yeah.
Quick.
Very quick. I realized because I was watching everybody else around me and I was like, man, this is not what I want. This is not what I want. Again, 18, they told me my life. I met a Korean lady. I call her Mina Harmony. And she's gonna hate me for that if she ever hears this. But she was a Korean American woman who got injured, lost her husband, and she was like, at the time she was like 55, and I was like, oh, like there's a representation like me, a Korean American. So I had to ask a lot of questions, and she's like, Sean, if you do the best out of it, you're gonna make the best life that you can, and that's what I wanted to hear. And so her life expectancy actually didn't change. They're like, you might lose 1 year off your life. But that's about it. As long as you're, staying fit, active, and things like that. I was like, okay, bet. So technically, I'm not too much different from everybody else out here as long as I put in the work. So that's really what kind of clicked in my head. I was like, all right, this is just like tutorial here. I'm in tutorial mode. Once I'm out, now it's time to make the moves. But there was a lot of questions that I asked, like, because I was actually going to drop out of UGA and go cook stage at restaurants because that was my dream goal, to be a chef.
That's what you always wanted to do.
Always wanted to do. I love serving people. I love cooking people. Being Korean American, like we joke about making kimchi with your families on the weekend, which is a lot rarer nowadays. But that's
lost art.
Lost art. Like my 큰고모, or great aunt, she does her own 된장, her own gochujang. She keeps it OG, and it just tastes so much better. And you know, there's a whole YouTube channel, and people are making money off of doing that, of the lost art, and that's kind of what kind of grew growing up. And being in LA at the time when I grew up, a lot of exposure to good food, and so I brought that here. Growing up in Buford, Georgia, not many options. I still had to drive all the way. Like Duluth has grown tremendously.
It's crazy how much has changed over the last 10 years.
Yeah, in
15
10
years.
Exactly. Yeah. So at the time, if I wanted Korean food, I'm little. Georgia's not a very walkable place. You have to drive everywhere. So I had to make the best of it. And at the time, YouTube was just starting. So I would have to call my aunt and say, like, hey, can you give me the recipe for your omurice? Or can you give me the recipe of how you're, like, what am I doing wrong with my kimchi? And so, like, practicing those things at home. But yeah, going back to it, I was like, okay, I know I want to cook. My dad was like, you got to be a doctor. It's just typical Asian stuff. Yeah. And I did well in school. I had a full ride at Georgia. I was on a pre-med track with business administration, but I was like, man, I don't think I'm going to be happy doing this. And I sat down with my dad. My dad's been an entrepreneur his whole life. He was like, you know what? I think so. Like, it makes more sense if you even just try business. But when I told him I was going to cook, he's like, hell no. Like, what are you, that's so hard business, low margins. Like, you're going to be a slave to it and it's so high risk, high reward.
So going back kind of to your accident and your spinal cord, I just want to touch on this before we kind of move on. Mm-hmm. I've been looking into, and something that people talk about a lot these days is Elon Musk's Neuralink. And there's the idea that one of the main things he wants to do is to be able to give people with spinal injuries the ability to move their limbs again. Mm-hmm. Is that something you've ever looked into? How well versed are you in it?
Yeah. So there's a whole... So I got sent to Korea for 3 months by my dad because, you know, as a father, he sees his son, he wants to, and he has the resources. He wants to do the best. He wants to say, hey, if I can make my son walk again, I'm going to take every choice. So I was his kind of a guinea pig. We have a little rough relationship in terms of that aspects, but I understand his heart. So I got to experience the dark side of spinal cord injury or like treatments. And so there are a lot of places where they're like, oh, stem cell this. And there was a huge stem cell craze just a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. And so they would sell you this hope like, oh, stem cells going to create your new neurons and things like that. Absolute bullshit. They're just taking tens of thousands of dollars, giving you, and you know, they mix Eastern Western medicine in Korea. So you're doing hanyak, doing acupuncture and all that. And then if you don't get any better, they're like, it's your fault. That's kind of how they push it on you. And so in Europe, they do a lot of electrical stimulation where they put an electrical pad and it jumps the signal over the broken portion of where your spinal cord got injured and sends it in. They've seen success, but I still don't know why they're not pushing it. Obviously, they don't have enough long-term effects for studies. So the pool for it is very small. I think they take like 5 applicants out of like tens of thousands. So it's even rare to get into, and they don't know the long-term effects. So you sign a lot of waivers of like, hey, like we're not responsible for anything. You're really going into some...
It's a huge gamble.
Yeah, human trials. I was like, is my life really worth... like, is walking that much important that I'd risk long-term effects? Or could I just wait until something's a little bit more safer and more proven and live a normal and build my life up to there? Those are things that I weighed about tremendously. With Elon Musk, I think is a great concept, but you know, he's a flag for killing so many animals. Think about that. How are you going to push into human trials if you put one and someone dies? That's crazy.
We got a while to go before.
We got a long while, but you know, you talked about technology advancing in your lifetime. Like it used to in the first podcast with Haas, it was like, you know, it took, you know, a person's lifetime to see technological advancement, but now it's getting shorter and shorter. So we're seeing that with spinal cord improvement and new researches and studies and technological advances. So maybe in my lifetime, it might be possible. I don't know, but
is that something that excites you of the possibility? If they said, hey, we have one and we've tested it, and the chance is not 100%, but maybe 75% chance. Like, what's that number? Or where do you decide, okay, fuck it, I'm going to try it? And how important is that to you?
For me, I mean, walking would be great. Or for me, my goals is like more than walking, standing. Like I can travel anywhere with my wheelchair, to be honest. It's just that sometimes like I can't even stand up to see over the let's say they have a partition or something like that. That's what bothers me. Walking, so even with walking, if you got to think about it, if your muscles have been atrophied for so long, there's a lot of therapy involved to go into that. So it's a huge time commitment. You got to take away from your job. You got to make sure your finances are all sorted. Like, even if these things exist, not your average Joe is going to be able to continue with it, because you're going to need the resources to make sure all your bills are covered, make sure you're staying in shape, and that you can step away from everything to focus on therapy. So like, there's so many conditions around it, right? So if those are all satisfied, then fuck it, why not? As long as death is not a not a side effect from it, right? And they're like, if it fails, then it just fails. Then yeah, I think maybe like 80% and up is a pretty good shot. Like, why not?
Like, worth the gamble.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe that, like, such a young age, and I can't believe, like, you're such a positive person. And it amazes me. And sometimes I think, like, if I think that I'm having a hard time or something's not going my way, and then I think of someone like you, I'm like, I feel like such a bitch. Like, it can be just so much worse out there. And what am I doing complaining? Because it can be so much more difficult, and you've overcome such more difficult situations that I've ever even experienced. So I don't know. You motivate me.
Thank you.
One of the questions I had was that whether or not you live alone. But earlier you mentioned that you recently got married.
Yeah, I did. And so we actually met on Bumble. And so our first date was very interesting. She was, I didn't know she had tattoos. She was in a very like stronger outfit. I thought she was more of like those quiet church Korean girls. And so our whole date was very interesting, but we had so much commonality. And then we really hit it off the bat. The next day, I actually made kimchi jjigae and toshirak and saw her at Emory at the time. And then we kind of clicked from there. And then we just kept dating, but things progressed really fast. Like, we knocked out really important questions. Like, what are family values? What are your morals? What do you want in life? Like, how is it important to stay with your family? How flexible are you? I don't know why we jumped into those conversations so quickly.
Just felt connected.
It just felt really connected. And the conversations, like when we were hanging out at her place, I would wait outside with my car and we just chat for hours on end, like 4 hours with just like that. And yeah, we just ended up dating, and things just got a little bit more serious with our parents, like going golfing together. We play Golf Stop together on family. Like, Golf Stop, for people who are listening and don't know, it's like a Korean card game. And so everything just really meshed together. And so we were already living together. She moved in because we started dating 2018, and then the pandemic hit 2 years after. And instead of commuting, I was like, yo, like, you're already coming to see me from Emory. I'm not too far. I've got a spare room if you like, or yeah, we could share the same bedroom. And so that's kind of what happened. And slowly everything progressed really fast, but everything progressed smoothly. Like, sure, is it perfect? I mean, I don't feel like no relationship is perfect.
Never.
Yeah. What I've learned is it's about, hey, is this person worth going through all the troubles? Like, that's the question that matters for us. So if we have a conversation or even confrontation or argument, it's, hey, I tell myself, this person is worth it to go through and discuss everything, hash it out through, and we'll resolve it or compromise it. And that's kind of how we proceeded with everything. That's how we fixed all of our arguments ever.
So you met her on Bumble.
Yeah.
And when you had your profile on Bumble, did you say that you're in a wheelchair?
So I wasn't sneaky.
Were you like surprised?
No,
first date.
No.
Like, hey.
A lot of people think that I do that, and I understand. A lot of guys do that because they're very they lack the self-confidence to be like. But I feel like it was dishonest to people that you would meet. So I was like, and if they're not gonna accept that from the get-go, they're probably not gonna accept it like when they, especially as a surprise. It's a big surprise. So all of my shots, my friend did for me. He's like a professional photographer, so he did headshots, full top and body, and so those are the pictures I posted. So people knew what they were getting into. They saw me in the full wheelchair and everything, and so there was no surprise. But she was, for her, she told me that, Sean, you're a Korean American guy who's posting yourself, not ashamed, in the wheelchair. What's your story? She was intrigued by that. Yeah, so that's kind of how I got the ticket into the door.
So she was attracted to the bravery.
Exactly.
Of that.
Yeah, the confidence in that. But I don't think I was I wasn't a very confident person to begin with before my injury. I was very shy. I would say I was even more fit and more, I guess, attractive before my injury. But I didn't have any confidence to spark up a conversation with a girl or anything. I was too scared. But after I got injured, I was like, what do I have to lose? It wasn't more like a shoot my shot, like, but it was this mentality of like, you really do miss 100% of shots that you don't take. You might as well, if you want to take the shot, you might as well take it. So I was like, okay, I'm confident who I am in my skin. I know what I'm worth. And I'm just going to put myself out there. And for the people that I attract, that's why I attract. If I don't, okay, that they weren't in my life to begin with. So that's kind of the attitude that I held.
So in this growth of confidence, do you think the inflection point was after the accident or when you met your girlfriend / wife? What do you think kind of triggered that increase in confidence? Did you feel like you had it and that's why you met her, or you met her and then that just added to it?
No, I definitely think I had it. And that, I think it happened during my injury. Because with that mental of like, I don't want to be like everyone else, like being, moping around, boohooing and crying and woe is me. Like, that's not what I wanted. And in that, naturally, the confidence is like, hey, if I want to be the best version, I got to be independent. Like, sure, I'm in the wheelchair, but I'm still going to school. I'm working at pop-ups wherever I can. I'm chasing my hobbies. I'm still traveling. Like, I normalize as much as I can to show like, because not to say that I have to prove to anybody anything, but that's what I wanted. I wanted to prove that, hey, fuck the wheelchair, I'm still a person that can do all these things. And by building myself up, I had the confidence to be out there like, yeah, I'm valued just as much as the next Joe on the block. Yeah, and with that's how I was able to that's how I chose the pictures of me in the wheelchair rather than just showing my face and putting it on there.
That's brave. I feel like there's a lot of people maybe in a similar situation that have been hesitant to do that may listen to this and be like, man, maybe I can go out there and meet someone too.
I really think so. What your biggest enemy is yourself, really. Yeah, being stuck in your head, that's what stops you. If you go in, and even in the aspect of entrepreneurship as well too, if you just kept sitting around thinking about maybe should I do it, should I not, you're not going to get anything accomplished. As soon as you decided to make a decision or effort to do it, then things start rolling.
So you've always wanted to be in the restaurant business, you mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. And starting a restaurant requires restaurant experience. And after your accident, I'm sure there must have been a time where you're like, I want to work at a restaurant, get some experience. Because if you're thinking I want a restaurant, if you're in college and you're thinking I want to start a restaurant, naturally you would gravitate towards I should get a job at a restaurant. Mm-hmm. But then you find yourself in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. What was that experience like? Did anyone hire you?
No.
Nobody?
No. Short answer, nobody hired me. Why? Because think about it. You are a big liability in the kitchen with your wheelchair. And then two, you can't really do the tasks that people who are full able-bodied can do. And I understand that from a business perspective. I understand that completely. That's why I wanted to go in and be like, can I internship for free? That way, like, I don't cost you anything other than your time, or if at all your time, because you'll have managers or other chefs who could train me. And I just wanted to get as much experience as I can. So I just kept throwing myself out there. Hey, I'll work for free. Hey, if you need me to do herb garnishing or whatever, I just need exposure. And systems of operations is what builds a good business at the end of the day. It's not, sure, food matters, but the operations, if you have that down, man, that's a profitable and successful business. So I actually was going in the intent of, let me see how your kitchen runs and operates. That's what I want to get here. Cooking and doing recipes and stuff, I can learn that on my own. But how you run your system, there's got to be something that you have that I don't, that I can learn from. And that was the intent of going to all these restaurants.
The balance between front of house and back of house and how that kind of works and how that almost dances.
Exactly. That's what, because I knew that at the end of the day, a business is you do a business to make money, right? And I needed a business that's well oiled and operates well. So if I have nothing, I have to absorb as much as I can. So I needed as much exposure that I could.
So did anyone give you that internship?
So one person, Staple House, shout out to Miss Kittinger, Miss Hittinger, she's now married again. But at Staple House, they let me in for one day. And even that one day was priceless because I really got to see operations, because they were doing really a farm to table concept, new purveyors coming in every morning, things of that nature. They've since changed that tasting menu that they do, and they're more of a market now. But I've just, even allowing me to be there, was like, wow, that means a lot to me. And it's crazy because I won an award. I hadn't seen her for like 6 years. I won an award and she was sitting at the same table as me. So that was wild too. But everybody else, they're like, hey, they kind of entertained the idea, but they just kept saying like, hey, I don't think it's going to work out. So I had a young who worked at Staple House, and he was doing pop-ups, and he said, Sean, yeah, let's get you some experience of what we're doing. And so that got me into like seeing how pop-ups work in Atlanta. Pop-ups back then were very new. That scene was growing, and then it's exploded now. And so that's kind of how I got a lot of my experience. But I knew that I was lacking for a good bit. So I just kept asking and networking, hey, can I see how your kitchen operates and things like that? So if I couldn't get a job, can I just spend a day just seeing how your operations work? And because I was a college student at the time, I was like, yeah, it's a college project. Or like, hey, I'm actually doing a franchising project. Can I come in and get your analytics and things like that? They wouldn't hesitate to say no, because especially if it was for a school project.
How many people do you think you approached and asked? Or how many people did you apply to, roughly?
Over 100.
Really?
Yeah.
All said no.
Pretty much everyone said no.
Which is crazy because we live in a time where we do our best and go out of our way to promote diversity and promote acceptance and promote all these ideas that we should be able to help in these types of situations. And yet, when you actually apply it to real life and you put yourself out there, it's just closed doors.
Yeah, left and right. But it's... At that point, it's a numbers game. You just keep grinding. Like, it's either you get so demotivated and you give up, or you finally reach the point where you got your foot in. So how good is your mental strength to keep going on? That's what it was.
I mean, if you did like about 100 at maybe 10 or 15, you must have been like, oh, this is not working. Or you're like, it's a numbers. I got to keep on going. Like, where's that balance between like, this is bullshit versus...
Oh, yeah, definitely. No, that's the thought that I had all the time. Like, man, this is bullshit. How the hell is it this hard? But at the same time,
you're offering to work for free.
Yeah, exactly. But that's pre-COVID, right? Where workers were bountiful. They really didn't give a time and day, like, and weren't really struggling. Things were going pretty normal. But for me, I, number one, knew that I wanted to open a restaurant for sure. So this is something I had to do no matter what. There was no option for no or failure. So I had to do it. And number two, I actually did have a franchising project, so I needed analytics. So I was like, okay, someone's got to say yes. Yeah. So those are the two main factors that kept pushing me to ask.
So we fast forward to 2020, and you decide to open up MUKJA, which is your restaurant, in the middle of the pandemic. And I'm assuming at that time, government is running extremely slowly. Inspections can't be easy. Getting people to even approve different things, permitting. What the hell were you thinking?
So we had signed the lease before COVID happened in early January. It's funny because
of 2020.
Of 2020.
So right
before we had signed, we had spent the whole year before that looking for a great lease to put our concept in. And we were getting shafted left and right. Our agents were not helping. So we finally went out and just reached out to brokers and agents ourselves. And once we found a location that we loved and thought it made sense, we were like, okay, let's sign this. We had our lawyer look over it. And there's a few things that I've learned now that I would do differently. But I remember the wife said, hey, so she grew up in Beijing, so she speaks a good bit of Chinese and Mandarin as well too. And so she saw a news article about a new virus strain going in China in December and was telling me about it. I was like, oh, that's it sucks to suck, China. And then COVID breaks literally 2-3 weeks like into the US for the first time. And I'm like, holy shit, how is this gonna affect us? And man, it was I was not prepared for the shitstorm that was to come for that. Like you said, permitting was not coming out. The city of Atlanta basically shut down and said, I don't know they said, we don't know when we're coming back. So everything's to a halt. Our landlord, they gave us a grace period, but then, I think city of Atlanta just started taking permits and approving permits in August of that year. So we are now 8 months into 2020 and no progress whatsoever. And I'm like, and they're asking for rent the next month, which I understand, but at the same time, I consider it an act of God. Like, we were delayed for 8 months, so can't you just push us for 8 months? It's not you guys. It's a $1 billion company. They're not really strapped on the little chump change of rent that we're giving. But for us, that's huge amount of capital that's we're going to bleed in because we don't know what the time, like permitting and building is already slow, and with the pandemic delaying everything. On an 8-month delay, I was like, this is a shitstorm waiting to destroy us. We're going to be drained of all of our capital before we can even open the doors. So we got plugged in with a lot of people, good and bad, but we pretty much got everything expedited from August to October.
Oh, wow.
I would say that was like a gift of God. Like, I don't know how that happened. We had to do a lot of networking, a lot of string pulling, a lot of favors here and there. But we got to open our doors. But it was so crazy. One of the craziest things that we experienced, even in the department of approving our floor plans, because we went into a second generation restaurant. So it was just cosmetic stuff that we really changed, and we had to retrofit everything else. There were some new rules and regulations that they changed during COVID that wasn't explained to everyone in the department. So half of the people were still on the old regulations. The other half was on some new regulations. I got a pre-approved for the old regulations, and then they swapped out my the person who was overseeing our floor plan, and then he's like, "Oh, we've made changes to our new rules and regulations." I was like, "How the fuck are you gonna switch that up when it was already pre-approved?" And we had to go back and forth. It was gonna introduce new construction costs and things like that. So it was an absolute nightmare. We had to get the city commissioner approved because our occupational our operate. What am I thinking? What am I thinking? Occupancy certification of occupancy was not coming out because the departments were fighting in between themselves and not issuing that.
Because you can't have the same amount of people that you used to have.
Exactly.
Because of COVID.
They changed it up. And I was like, how the hell are you guys going to push that on me now? When I got approved for it, just because someone changed, you can't just throw that on me. So I had to get approved, and we had to just operate because I was like, city, you guys are not going to pay my rent. I need to bring in revenue. I don't even know how I'm going to bring in revenue because dining's not even open. I'm a brand new restaurant with a brand new concept, let alone Korean fried chicken coming into Midtown, which Midtown had not seen at all. So there's a lot of gamble here. And we basically, if I could wait until things normalize, I would have waited. Why not? That's the smarter move. But again, this is the cards that I was dealt with. I was losing capital. I had to make a decision to start moving. And that's kind of the reason why we had to push to open.
And you could have built your restaurant pretty much anywhere else, but you chose to go to Midtown, which is not an easy place to start a new restaurant. It's a very urban area also. You rely on the businesses around you. It's a different area. I mean, you could have easily done something out here in the suburbs and maybe had it a little bit easier of a start. Why did you choose to go into Midtown?
Yeah, so Midtown the concept of MUKJA, right? It's Korean. It says Korean fried chicken, but I like to say the identity is Korean American. That's who I am at the end of the day. As Korean Americans, it's a weird spot. We're not fully Korean, but we're not fully accepted as Americans.
I always say it's a people without a home. Not fully accepted where you came from, not fully accepted where you are. It's a really odd, weird place to be.
Exactly. But I want to represent that through the food and the concept itself. So MUKJA itself, we wanted people to know about Korean fried chicken, and this was the rise of like Parasite was winning awards, BTS was taking charts. Like, it was just the wave. And Korean barbecue had already taken a storm from the early 2010s in Georgia, at least. So it's like fried chicken just makes sense. I took a lot of inspiration from Roy Choi with his gogi truck, fusing tacos and Korean flavors in LA. I was like, we're in the South, we're doing fried chicken. Who wouldn't love fried chicken in the South? It just makes sense. It's a different twist on fried chicken. And, Korean fried chicken business in Korea is the #1 franchise in Korea. I think there's more businesses of Korean fried chicken than any other businesses in Korea. It's so competitive out there, and it's good for its own right. So I was like, it makes sense and nobody was doing it in Midtown at the time. I didn't want to open up another gogi jip because so much it's even more overhead. Yeah. Steakhouses are expensive. During COVID, at the time, I know all the complaints from my friends who worked at places. The work-life balance is not great too. I was like, let's try to do a different approach of trying to bring Korean flavors. That's the mission statement of our company. And so we're like, let's do Korean fried chicken with a little bit of a twist. And so with that in mind, we also wanted to make sure that this business, it's really grand, the idea. We wanted to make a national brand. Being someone with very little to no restaurant experience, it sounds like a naive fool. you could be right. If you're looking at it from any other perspective, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. You look at it like an idiot who's bound to fail. But I was so confident that it could. If I was a foodie, and I mean, I still am. I go out to a lot of restaurants, not to just to experience what the market is. And that's a lot of the homework that I did. And I was like, man, there really is not a good market for this. And I know there's a demand with how big Korean culture is exploding, how big already the international and student population is that wants this. And as well, like you said, in urban, who's pretty open. Half of it's open. I've got a funny story for that. And so Midtown, if we wanted any chance of great exposure, where we have a lot of business conferences coming in. We have the most diverse group of people, not just Korean people, that's going to come and try our food. And if we execute it, I think we got something. So that was the main driving point of being in the Midtown. But there was the craziest thing that we were completely not expecting is that half of other Midtown or the Atlanta population is very ignorant in that they walk in, they don't read the signs, they don't see that it's Korean fried chicken, or they just see an Asian guy and they're like, where's my fried rice? Oh, can I get a lemon pepper? Aren't you guys American Deli? Like most Korean people own it. Like that was the ignorance that we had to really break through. And we're still doing it. We're 3 years in, we have a name for ourselves, but we're still breaking that with a lot of people. That was the hardest part of kind of explaining our concept.
Because 2020, 2021, even going to 2022, you know, we've all seen them push this stop Asian hate kind of narrative, right? And I told my wife that I was going to bring you in. And I told her, oh, he has this restaurant in Midtown called MUKJA. And she's like, oh, I heard about them. I saw them in the Korean newspaper a couple years ago.
Oh, right.
And they got robbed, is what she said. And she almost said it in a way that it felt like you were targeted. Do you feel, walk us through that day, and do you feel like what really happened?
Yeah. So that day, we got in the morning and you know, my worker's like, hey boss, it's shattered. I'm like, what do you mean? Our alarms didn't go off. It just happened to be someone forgot the alarm. I thought I turned it on, and I specifically told it. And I've learned a lot. It was a little bit too lax back then, but I've learned a lot to just double check everything. I can't trust anyone other than myself, my own eyes. But yeah, the alarm was off. Someone had gotten a rock, destroyed the front windows, ran in, and stole all the POSs, thinking there was cash. We have a full sign that says we're cashless. So I'm like, you're absolutely retarded. You have no business being in here.
Yeah.
All you did was fuck up a small business. And you know what's crazy? No one else got hit. Only us. So yeah, it did feel personal. It felt like, man, you're just, sure, we're on the side street, but there's cameras, there's lights all around. Cops didn't really do shit, to be honest with you. But I was like, man, this really took a hit. The POSs were $4,000 down on the POS system. We had to pay for the glass. We couldn't. The fix was just below our deductible, and so it didn't make any sense. They were like, if you go through this, your rates are going to go up too. I was like, what? This is the worst hand to deal with, and I was so bitter. But yeah, even in the weeks leading up to that, we kept getting phone calls. I was like, oh, is this the Chink place? Y'all serve like, and I was like, what in the hell is going on? Like this is what I say, like being Korean American, I thought people would be able to relate, but they just see our face and think that they could do whatever. But that's what happened. I checked the cameras. The guy, he ran in. Just one guy that ran in. He scoured through everywhere looking for cash. I'm like, if you just took a moment to read, that's what I'm saying. Nobody even reads anything. We have a full sign that says, hey, we're cashless, a card only. You would have known. All he stole was POSs, fucked up a small business, and took a bunch of our receipt paper. That's all he did. And that made us so upset because we got to operating for the PN right away because I had great people who reached out to me. But still, that really pissed us off during those times.
Do you still feel that today? I mean, you've been there 3 years now. Do you feel a shift in the environment, shift around the people around you, or do you feel like you still have to deal with that on a regular basis?
People being aggressive towards Asian people, I think it's died down a lot, and it's just gone back to being just shitty customers. Midtown is a tough place. You got such a diverse group of people who are coming all over the place because you got places that are gentrified or in places that are not so gentrified. So you got a very diverse group of people, and in the city of Atlanta, people are very particular, and you could serve the same thing. So, for example, we'll have food, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't cooked right," even though it's right. We'll take it back, and just as an experiment, we'll sit, bring it back out. It's the same food, and they're like, "Wow, it's amazing." So, yeah, I think that's what we deal with, just people being assholes for the most part.
So your restaurant is MUKJA, which literally means let's eat in Korean. I think it's a super cute, awesome name.
Thank you.
You have this Instagram that I think is amazing. Your MUKJA Instagram is so much fun. You give such a look inside how that restaurant runs, the successes, the hardships. You really are open about what that process is like. You didn't start that way. I started scrolling through the beginning, and the beginning of it was a lot of marketing type stuff.
Yep.
Professionally shot things, and it didn't seem as popular then. But you started opening up about yourself and your journey and the restaurant itself, and all of a sudden you see like this increase in content, and I find the current content so much more enjoyable.
Thank you.
What was that process like? When did you decide I need to change, and what made you say I'm just gonna tell everyone everything?
So originally we had I had an ex-business partner. He had a lot of experience in marketing and advertising. So that's what he pushed for. And it made sense to me. Like when I see all these other fancier restaurants with like 100K followers, whether they're bought or not, that's how their posts generally look, more professional headshots or photo shoots and things of that nature. But then, looking at the analytics, there's no engagement. I was like, man, is this really worth it? And we just kept pushing. We just kept beating on a dead horse. And hopefully, hey, maybe we just need to get lucky. And then I just was not motivated to post anything on that once I had to take over the accounts. And I was like, what is going to make me happy or worth doing so? I actually don't, it's a lot of commitment to post, to edit and things like that. And that's just not what I like to do. But I know that I need to do it because it's my business at the end of the day. It's a new age that we're going into. So for that, I was like, what is something I can talk about that would interest people? I don't need 1 million followers or anything like that, but people who will bring engagement. So I posted my very first post had so much engagement, so many comments rooting for me. I was like, wow, like this is crazy. Like people really want to hear something like this. And so I was like, okay, let me keep following that. And the wife kept pushing, hey, you bring a new perspective and something fresh. There's a lot of complaints and people don't understand because as a business owner and a customer, the perspective you'll never understand unless you're a business owner yourself. And I was like, maybe there's some dialogue that we can have there to really have them understand. Like this morning, I was late to my restaurant because I spent 45 minutes of my own time to respond back to someone being upset about our food increase prices. And I gave them all the analytics. It was like 1,500 words. Did I go over? Yeah, but like I'm very honest about like, hey, like I understand why I bitch and complain at restaurants that are so expensive now. But I understand at the same time, and let me show you why. I broke down his questions. I gave him all my analytics, and I said, this is just a small tip of the iceberg that you're not seeing. But I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. This is me coming to you arms wide open to let you know, like, hey, I'm open as a small business owner to let you know why we're doing things. Overhead in Midtown is expensive. Our food cost is expensive. It's gone up. I looked since the day we opened to now, our chicken cost got up 90%. Like things like that, you're not gonna know unless you're doing the day-to-day ins and outs of running a business.
And sometimes you address reviews on your Instagram as well, which I thought was very smart. And I looked you up on your Google reviews and your Yelp reviews, and you respond to almost every review.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reviews.
There's a lot.
Hundreds. And you respond to all of them.
I do. And I personally respond to everything. Our key statement on that, if you look, it's with love, MUKJA. How are you gonna beat on someone? Especially this is what it is. The angle is if someone else reads that and sees a business owner replying back, every single one of them, cordially, respectfully, and with logical thought and reason, how are you gonna bash on them, right? A lot of I bring back, we're humans at the end of the day. There can be mistakes.
Of course.
That's fine. And so as customer service, we go out of our way, hey, reach out to our email. Like if you look at our responses, they are very personalized. They're not cookie cutter. So you're not talking to a bot. I mean, with now Chat GPT, sure. Well, let's not go there.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's another rabbit hole. But they're very personal. And I said, reach out. If you read it, reach out. I'll give you a meal on the house. I can be personable with you. And, I want to make your experience great. But 95% of the time, people don't take up on that offer and they just leave it. They're just so bitter. There's very bitter people who just want to talk shit. And, that's fine. But while being as personal as I could be, I'm thinking about not just that customer, but other people who are looking at those reviews as well.
Because if you hear about a new restaurant and I want to go, you kind of you skim the reviews these days. And right now it seems like you skim the Google reviews a little bit more than you skim the Yelp reviews. It seems like.
So
do you see more traffic in one or the other?
I actually.
And what's your stance on Google versus Yelp?
Yelp. Oh man, I actually fucking hate reviews. They're horrendous. Because if you know anything about our business and you actually come, sure, we only have one shot to bring repeat customers, but if you know anything about our business, we're very personable people. You can talk to any of the cashiers. You can reach out to me. You can send an email. I'll respond back. I'll even call you. I'll even sit down at my own restaurant, meal on the house, and talk to you. That's how I go for customer service. And so a lot of these people, they just like to rant. They're not happy with, they feel entitled and things like that. I used to give a lot of care, and I still do to some point, but I realized some people are just unreasonable. So I don't really entertain unreasonable people, but people who are, sure, they're upset, but once I throw that dialogue and they respond back, then I know that they're reasonable people because they're wanting to be understanding. So on Yelp and Google, I really hate it because reviews are so subjective.
And everyone's a food critic and expert these days.
Exactly. You don't know how a restaurant runs. You don't know, like food cost, like even for that this morning about food costs, you've never dived deep. You just saw something, you were unhappy with it. I didn't force you to come eat at my restaurant, to be honest with you. You came. If you don't like the prices and you want to know, sure, that's fine. But don't come running at me saying I'm too overpriced. Like you don't know anything about it. So that's why those reviews, I think I'm a little bit more responsive to the Google reviews because we have more foot traffic because of the analytics. We get over 250,000 to 300,000 views or clicks on our Google Maps.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Than we do on Yelp, actually. So Yelp, I think the people on Yelp, they're a little bit more foodies. So they can be the harsher critic, but we're very confident in the consistency in the food that we serve, as you've sampled earlier. So we kind of just let that run on its own.
And I think the biggest unfair part of restaurant reviews is when people blame the restaurant for the delivery taking too long, blaming them for their DoorDash experience or their Uber Eats experience. They'll go on there and be like, 1 star, the food showed up cold and it was DoorDash. And sometimes DoorDash takes 2 hours to get to you. Yeah. That's not your fault.
That's not my fault at all.
But when I scroll through some restaurants that I really like and I'll look and I'm like, how are you going to blame DoorDash for this? How are you going to blame them for DoorDash?
Exactly. And how are you going to blame on food quality, especially fried chicken, for delivery? You're the one who's assuming responsibility at that point. There's, some people argue like, oh, then why are you offering delivery? I mean, because we're a business at the end of the day, we need to have those options, right? And so, yeah, like if you look at, I think our Grubhub, we have like a 3.5 rating, and every single rating, that 1 star, it's from delivery drivers just not showing up. That's nothing we can do. Yeah. We can do. So we just bite the bullet there. But I mean, that's why we push an emphasis on people come and dine in. That's why even for the tenders, we don't put it on the delivery platforms. You have to come in store because we want to push in store because it's a whole experience to come in, counter service, see the pictures of the food, see the murals that we have, and just be a part, and even the music, the ambiance, like that's all a part of the experience about the food. And so that's why we go for the push of, hey, you guys really need to come and dine in with us because if you think the food is good, deliver. Imagine how the food is when you come in store. So yeah, but at the same time, we're kind of at the delivery services whim. Yeah. Because
you can't not do it.
You can't not do it. That's stupid. It's so much revenue, and what a lot of restaurants do, they just increase in whatever percent share that they're taking, they'll just increase it because that's what you have to do. Like margins are people think that just because you own a restaurant, you're making millions of dollars. You're really not. Like sure, Chick-fil-A, but Chick-fil-A, all these huge businesses, $1 billion businesses, they have economies of scale. The branding is enormous. Like they've taken time and time to build up to that point. But for one store, your margins are pretty thin.
So that's a good lead into what's next for MUKJA. Is this, because you had mentioned when we talked off camera that your original idea was to make this in some sort of franchise.
Yeah, it is.
So where do you see it going?
So that's what I talked with a franchising professor and some other people who just started franchising. I've seen people fail. I've seen people with success.
Not easy.
It's not easy because what I'm seeing, a lot of people who have success, they're going to private equity. They're selling 49% of their company. It's a lot of control. It's not majority, but still 49% is a lot. And because they're so small, they don't get much investment in to compare to what I want. And so it's a question that I'm continuously analyzing. I'm in a position where we're not doing terrible. We're profitable now, and so that I can take some time to really analyze all the deals that I have available and what my next move is, because I need to make sure my next move is going to be correct. I have so much experience, so I need to slow down and really look at the bigger picture here for expansion. I personally don't want to open a second location. It's with hiring and things like that. It's a whole nother monster, because it's actually just not double the work. It's almost triple and quadruple the work, because there's so many more moving parts now as a single owner that's operating all of this, right? And so that's a big factor as to why I just want to go ahead with pitching the one store that I have. But again, you might not bring as many interested franchisees, right? So there's a lot of trade-offs, and I just got to make a decision at the end of the day, which one it sounds the best for me. But franchising is definitely the route that I want to go.
Would you consider other cities?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe Miami?
New York. So you know what's crazy? Our best customers are people who come from different major cities and appreciate the brand better, because their area, like in Atlanta, people are just stuck to the same old food. We're now thankful. We're just pretty slow in the food scene compared to other major cities like LA, San Francisco, New York, and Miami, even Texas too. Like there are a lot of bold flavors. Atlanta's a lot more slower. We're very slow to change on that. So that aspect, we get a lot of people. Atlanta's a major hub. We get a lot of people coming, passing through. So a lot of our customers that leave great reviews and champion us, they're from out of state. Houston, Dallas, Miami, New York. And then they tell people back in their hometown. So when they come visit, they come see us. Like I remember one guy, he told his friends in New York, hey, there's a Korean spot that I really enjoy. And then a bunch of Korean people started coming. I'm like, where are you guys? Are you guys from Duluth? And they're like, no, we came from New York. I was like, that's crazy. Yeah. That it's spreading word of mouth from other cities. So that's actually kind of what I want to do. I think having that concept in major cities where that identity of Korean American is a little bit more understood, or the flavors are more, I guess, appreciated, I think it would make a killing. Yeah.
I think I would encourage you maybe to go to places where they're not there, because if I think of New York, New Jersey, there's so many Korean places, so much competition. Yeah. And even if your food is better, it's still difficult to stand out.
Sure.
Because there's so much competition. But then you go to a place like Miami, which I love Miami, and there are maybe 3 or 4 Korean type restaurants in all of Miami. Mm-hmm. And it's ass. Just complete ass. We went to this one, I forget what it was called, like Two Sisters Bowl or something. And they did like these bibimbap bowls. And I walked in there, and we went in there, and it looked like a place that's focused more on like delivery than actually like eating. But they had a little eat-in area. They had beer. And I was talking to the manager, and he saw, like me and my wife, he saw 2 Korean people walk in, and it was the first time he's seen Korean people walk into their Korean restaurant.
Wow.
Because there's no Koreans there.
Yeah.
And he gave us this food, and he's like, hey, can you try this? Can you try this? Can you try this? Because he wanted some feedback of like actual Korean people.
Is he Korean?
No, no, he was Hispanic. And so he was a manager, and he wanted feedback of like actual Korean people. And they brought us some food. They brought us some like their banchan. And the bowl was okay. They brought some banchan. It was like some bu, like radish. And it sat out too long. Because you can tell.
Yeah, you can tell.
That stuff goes bad if you sit out too long.
Yeah.
But he had no idea. Because he had never had it before.
That's crazy that, we're in an age where you can just look everything on YouTube, but you need to experience things. Wow.
He had no idea that this was bad. And as soon as I ate it, I was like, bro, I don't want to be a dick about it, but this is not good.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that it's not good. It's just been sitting out too long, and it's obvious. He's like, how do you know? I'm like, when you have it, when it's not been sitting out. And then when he asked me, how do you know? I was like, fuck, this guy's been serving like this whole time. No idea that it's probably sitting in like, one of those trays outside. But it goes bad quickly. And I thought that was interesting because they were really busy. I saw, pick up. And the first time they saw Korean people, they're like, we need your feedback. I'm like, bro,
that's wild.
You got a long way to go, And, he's like, hey, can I have your number? Like, can I call you and ask you, do you live near here? Like, I don't live in Miami, But there's so few Korean people in such a huge, metropolis type of market. And the fact that they didn't know any of this stuff, I thought that was really interesting. And there's one Korean barbecue place in Miami, and it's like really high end. So it's not like real Korean barbecue.
Yeah, I understand.
It's like one of these really trendy, like super expensive Korean barbecue places. but it's not the Korean barbecue experience. Where you it has to be a little bit grimy.
So what is your definition of Korean barbecue? Because it's changed so much drastically.
I like the really traditional Korean barbecue places. So when I go to Korean barbecue, because Korean barbecue is number one, it's not cheap.
Oh no.
But American restaurants and steakhouses are even more expensive. So a lot of times me and my wife will go out to dinner somewhere, and after we're done, and we, for two of us, maybe we'll spend $100 or $150, maybe even $200 on dinner. And we'll get our bill and be like, oh, we should just went to Korean barbecue.
Yeah.
I think it all the time. All the time, right? Because I know what I'm going to get, and it's going to be delicious. And I like the more traditional. I like the old, because I like going to like the older Korean restaurants more than I like going to the newer places. Because I feel like the older places will focus on a higher quality meat sometimes. I like to go to the Korean barbecue places that do like USDA prime meat. And there's like 2 or 3 in Duluth that always do that versus some of the other quicker ones these days that don't. And it's not easy because beef is really expensive right now.
It really is.
And to find that balance, I get it. Like some people have to cut their cost. But that experience just is something that's not in Miami. And I've been looking for it because we go there all the time. And the Korean community is slowly growing. But Korean barbecue and Korean food in general, like you said, is getting really popular.
Extremely.
People are looking for it. And that's one market that I think it's like wide open. I've always thought, like if I'm going to open a restaurant, that's where I'd open one.
I would say the hardest part is sourcing Korean ingredients. Yeah, that's the hardest part of why certain areas and markets that are underserved are really underserved. Just being able to get, sure, maybe you're able to bring it, but maybe the cost gets ridiculous because of transport, right? Like for example, with US Foods, they told me if I have 5 or 10 locations, then we can start bringing your gochugaru and gochujangs that you use with that company, and we'll import it ourselves. It's like, shit, I got a long way to go then. Then I have to go to a wholesale of like Namdaemun or something. But those are the main reasons why I want to go in certain cities. But finding out the logistics to getting it done, that's the homework that I really need to do. Because for Miami, we get a lot of people from Miami that do a quick getaway to Atlanta. They swing by MUKJA religiously. And I was like, wow, you guys really love like Korean everything. And they're like, yeah, there's nothing here.
There's nothing there.
Yeah.
And there's obviously Miami, South Florida is a huge Hispanic population, Cuban population, and they love Korean food. Love it. Because it's really similar to what they eat.
You know what's funny? You know Sogongdong Sundubu, right? I've seen more Latino population than I see Korean people eating there. And that's the funniest thing every time I go in.
And it's growing.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyway, getting back to the story here. So, do you ever feel like your disability, and I'm going to take a step back. How do you perceive that word disability? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Does it not bother you?
It doesn't bother me. Just as of an optimistic guy, I'm a very go-lucky guy. Like, if I let all these words irk me, man, I'm giving into it. I'm giving into the world.
But if you had a preference,
I mean, it is what it is. I'm disabled. Like, if you stand next to me, I'm in a wheelchair. How different that guy? Other than we're 2 Korean men, one guy's in a wheelchair, one guy's standing. Yeah, obviously disabled. I mean, sure, it is what it is. That's just kind of how I see it as, and I don't take any offense to it.
You're a big car guy. That's how we met.
Oh yeah.
And I always wondered what a lot of, especially the higher end car guys, they talk to a doctor, they get a little handicap plaque, and they park their Lamborghini in the handicap spot. Does that rub you the wrong way?
Dude, that fucking makes me pissed.
Does that really piss you off?
It really pisses me off.
Yeah.
Because now I have to be the asshole because you saw me getting out the truck, right? So I need space because I actually have to get my wheelchair out. Now if you take the handicap spot, now I got to double park and park on the line. And now I look like the asshole because I need space to get out of my car. So that's what really makes me upset.
Because it makes you
the asshole at the end.
Makes you the asshole.
Which is kind of funny if you think
about it.
Not
because they took your space, but because you have to take someone else's space.
Exactly.
Because there's a lot of them.
Oh.
And I'm not gonna blow anyone's spot up, but like there's a lot of you motherfuckers out there who drive extremely expensive cars and just rock that handicap plaque, and they think it's so funny.
It's like a medal of honor for them. And I think me being out here, Shows would be like, oh shit, Sean's pulling up. Maybe we should leave it open. Things like that. Yeah, but I understand why people want the handicap spot, but at the same time, like, man, if you're taking this car out, you're kind of assuming responsibility when you're putting it on the road and out in public spaces. So,
all right, quick scenario. I'm an extremely unhappy customer with either the food or the experience. And I want to walk up to complain. And then I see the owner sitting in a wheelchair. And I hesitate because I don't want to be that guy. How does that make you feel?
I understand the hesitancy, but I think that they should always be honest. Honesty goes a long way. Because how am I, as a business owner, going to make my business better if you don't tell me my faults are wrong? You can't just give me he's disabled, we'll let him slide. No, that's gonna put me at complacency for my business and me as a person. That doesn't help me improve or grow. I need you to be damn honest. If you didn't like something, again, being reasonable. If you didn't like something, let me take care of you. Let me make sure things are right. Start up the dialogue, and we can grow a relationship there from the restaurant owner to a customer, and making sure that you're taking care of every time they come in and you have the best experience. Because if you don't approach me, start that dialogue just because you feel pity, it's a little disrespectful in my opinion. Like, just because I'm in a wheelchair doesn't mean I'm a person who can have a conversation with you. Yeah.
Do you feel that sometimes where people try to almost treat you with kid gloves? Do you feel that? Can you like how hard or how strong is that feeling?
So one thing that I train my staff, and one thing I do when I'm at the restaurant myself, I check up on it. I don't need to do this, but I just check up on tables. Once they get their food, give them about 5-10 minutes into the meal, just check up on them. Hey, how was the meal? A lot of people, if they're upset, they'll the people who are honest, they'll tell me straight up. But other people, they're not happy with something, but like you could see it on their face. They hesitate for a second, and then they just say like, yeah, it's fine. I was like, oh, it's fine. Like, fine versus, yeah, dude, this is amazing. You can catch those small nuances. I'm like, no, tell me what's wrong. They keep looking at my chair. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. You can be as open as you want. I'm here to make, and this is how I preface it. I don't attack them. I said, I'm here as an owner to make sure that your experience is great, your food is great, that you're taken care of every time, because I respect and appreciate you taking the time to come to my restaurant. You can go anywhere else, but you came here. So I want to make sure you're taken care of. And by shifting that narrative, people feel a little bit more open to talk.
Do you ever feel like, or have you ever had an experience where it went the other way, that they almost use a disability against you? Or is that something that doesn't really happen?
It doesn't really happen. I don't think people ever assume that I think you're always, in our society, it's like you got to open the doors for disabled. You got to, they're disabled. So you got to treat them a little bit better. That's kind of what people are going up. So I've never really seen anyone be an asshole to me because I'm in a wheelchair. Only one time I was at Buford's Farmers Market, and a new line had opened up, and I went to go take it, and a guy just yells at me. He's like, "You disabled fuck." I was like, whoa. Like, those are some fighting words right now. Like, do you know what day and age we are? I could be crazy. Like, I could just, with the amount of shooting, like, you don't know what could happen. Those are some crazy words. That's the only experience that I've ever had.
Do you feel like, is it harder to be an Asian working in the city? Or is it harder to be disabled? Or is it a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. So I don't know how comfortable you are with guns or open carry and things, or just like even concealed carry too. So I was always against guns, very religious background. My parents were like, no, it's not worth it. But I had a gun pulled out 3 times since the start of the pandemic.
Really?
Yeah. One of them was on the highway. Some guy was road raging. Another one, they got mad over some waffles because they didn't understand that scallions go in a waffle. So we actually had to take off waffles because I thought this was the most ridiculous thing that I had a gun pulled out over. They couldn't understand. They were
at
like,
the restaurant.
They were like, you served me spoiled waffles, because they didn't understand scallions. It's green in a waffle. They've never seen green scallion. So it's like a take on 부침개, 파전, and we made it into a waffle. Hey, it's fun, Korean American.
That sounds pretty good, actually.
It was pretty damn good, to be honest with you. But this guy just did not have it, and he was pissed. Yeah, he's like, I spent all this motherfucking money, and like, he pulled out his gun. He's like, you're gonna give me my money back now? I was like, this is wild. Like,
that's crazy.
I just had to process that for a second. Like, is this really happening?
Over waffles.
Over waffles. Over goddamn waffles. Yeah. And so I decided,
and not worth getting shot.
It's
over,
not worth
obviously.
getting. Obviously, yeah. So I just took it off the menu, and some people complain about it. I was like, my life is not, like, again, it's not worth, like, the operation sense and stuff like that. But my security guard took me to the range, showed me safety, took safety classes, went shooting, was a great introduction, was very comfortable. I wasn't scared of it. I understand everything in terms of being a very responsible gun owner. And I really enjoy shooting and going to the range now.
Yeah.
And so I just have it on me all the time.
And it's kind of therapeutic.
It gives me some people are like, oh, what's the point? If someone pulls out a gun and you get shot, like, what's the point? I mean, it's just because it's easier to say when you've never been in a position where you're extremely helpless.
Yeah.
I like times where like I've people see me in the chair, they think I'm an easy target, but then I have someone they don't see another person come and help me out, so they I've been in situations where people are like approaching me, they walk away because they see someone else, not knowing that I'm already strapped in the first place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's more so me being disabled and feeling a little bit vulnerable compared to the regular rather than being Asian.
Your journey is it's quite a journey. I hope there's people out there listening that feel motivated to get off their ass in really poor choice of words, but to get motivated to do something with their life and know that you can't let this shit get to you, that you can. Kind of final thought here. There are a lot of people out there that are in a really similar situation to you in their life. How it happened, I mean, it's one thing, but a lot of people do go through that and go through a struggle, and not many of them get out of it as positively as you do. Not many of them are able to deal with the anxiety and the pressure like how well as you have. If you had to give them a word of advice, what it would be?
Don't be scared to ask for help. That's the number one thing that I've realized that helped me out tremendously. Just sure, you want to do things on your own, but if you can humble yourself, have a little bit of humility, and say, hey, it's okay for me to ask help, just to get you to start taking baby steps, it'll go a long way. Because there's gonna be someone out there who's open to give you their time and be like, yeah, you're worth, I don't mind helping me out, or I don't mind, like for example, a mentor and mentee. He doesn't really have to help the mentee for the most part, but he's going out of his way. There's gonna be somewhere out there that's willing to help you. If you can't really find the urge or the motivation in yourself, there's gonna ask for help. There's something wrong with it, because like I remember going into a grocery store, I couldn't even reach the top shelf, and I almost like bawled. I was like, damn, this is what my life's gone to. And then I was like, I started let the humility down. I just asked the guy, like, hey, can you just help me reach that? And he was more than happy. He's like, hey, do you need anything else? Can I help you around? And that, if you're in a situation like myself, yeah, asking for help will help you take those baby steps and get a little bit more comfortable and start making the changes that you need.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Final plug, maybe a little quick plug on your restaurant.
Yeah.
And what you got going on over there.
Sure. Hey, so we are MUKJA Korean Fried Chicken, located in Midtown Atlanta, Georgia, right next to the Taco Mac and Sweet Hut building. We serve a variety of Korean fried chicken. And we have validated parking, which is a huge thing in Midtown. Come check us out. We have everything from tenders, wings, fried chicken sandwiches, bone-in chicken if you like it classic. We actually have a sweet and spicy pork rice bowl called 돼지불고기 덮밥 as well too. We'd love to have you. We have chicken and beer specials all the time as well too, and it'd be a great thing for you guys to experience what we have to offer and share a little bit of that to your circles around town.
You got that down. And definitely check out his Instagram. It's pretty awesome. And maybe one day YouTube.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Which I think I would really enjoy watching. Thank you for coming out.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's such an opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, bro. Awesome. Bro. Woo. Seriously. Fucking crushed it.
Wow, that was fun.
You like that?
I feel like we can go for hours.
Yeah. That's
Dude,
what I gotta